That's me.
So let's get specific. Who at the table has seen something and didn't say anything?
I mean, come on. Objectification, harassment.
At first, I brushed it off, thinking to myself, oh, he's just losing his marbles. It seemed easier to label it that way, rather than dig deeper. But if I had truly known what was happening beneath the surface, I think I would have handled the entire situation so differently. I would have been more patient, more understanding, and far less dismissive. Maybe then, my father wouldn't have felt so isolated or misunderstood. That regret still lingers. And just as life often throws curveballs when you least expect them, Hollywood delivered a shocker that no one could have predicted. Marvel Studios suddenly announced that Ryan Reynolds was out. The news hit like a thunderclap, louder than any Avengers. Endgame twist. Fans gasped, critics scrambled, and executives across the industry reeled. This wasn't just another casting shakeup or a quiet contract dispute. This was a seismic event that rattled the very foundation of the Marvel empire. Ryan Reynolds wasn't just another actor in the franchise. He was a cornerstone, a global box office magnet, a personality that audiences trusted and adored. In a world where A-list stars are treated like royalty, the idea of someone of his stature being cast aside overnight was almost unthinkable. Yet, here it was. Ryan, the man fans had expected to lead Marvel's future blockbusters, suddenly on the chopping block. And the timing raised even more eyebrows. His exit didn't come out of nowhere. It followed almost immediately after filmmaker Justin Baldoni revealed receipts that the internet would describe as nothing short of explosive. But here's the kicker. It wasn't just about Ryan. This bombshell tied directly into a much messier personal feud involving his wife, Blake Lively, and the fallout from that feud reshaped the entire narrative. So the million-dollar question became, how does one of Hollywood's most bankable, charismatic, and seemingly untouchable stars end up here? The rumor mill had been spinning for months with whispers about strained relationships between Ryan and Marvel executives. Insiders claimed boardroom arguments, clashing visions for upcoming films, and subtle but mounting power struggles. For a while, it all seemed like typical industry gossip, the kind of background noise that surrounds any blockbuster franchise. But then, what started as whispers erupted into sirens after a dramatic fallout surrounding a highly anticipated adaptation, one directed and controversially co-written by Justin Baldoni. At first glance, the situation appeared to be nothing more than another behind-the-scenes Hollywood clash. Justin and Blake reportedly found themselves at odds over creative decisions, how the script should unfold, how characters should be portrayed, and whose vision would ultimately win out. Rumors painted the picture of alleged power plays, artistic disagreements, and subtle digs, the usual Hollywood cocktail of chaos that tabloids love to feast on. But when Marvel Studios dropped its official announcement, the script flipped entirely. This wasn't about a director and an actress disagreeing anymore. Suddenly, Ryan himself, who had seemed to be on the periphery of the drama, was thrust into the spotlight as the central figure. He was no longer seen as an innocent bystander, but was now being framed as the very reason his Marvel future was declared dead on arrival. To really understand how such a stunning downfall could unfold, you have to rewind and look at Baldoni's journey. Justin had built his career on an ability to tap into raw human emotion, taking intimate stories and transforming them into cinematic experiences that left audiences in tears and critics applauding. His reputation as a filmmaker wasn't built on spectacle alone, but on heart, honesty, and depth. Fans trusted him to deliver, and when word spread that he would be adapting a beloved novel for the big screen, anticipation reached fever pitch. Everyone wanted to see how he would bring the source material to life, how he would balance its delicate emotions with cinematic flair. But what no one could have predicted was that this project would become ground zero for one of the most shocking and dramatic Hollywood implosions in recent memory. And at the very center of that storm was Blake Lively. Known for her effortless charm during interviews, her undeniable elegance on red carpets, and her ability to capture the spotlight without even trying, she was poised to shine in the leading role. On paper, it seemed like a perfect match. A celebrated director, a star actress, and a beloved story. Yet instead of becoming the success everyone envisioned, this collaboration spiraled into controversy, whispers of betrayal, and a domino effect that would eventually take down one of the biggest names in the industry, Ryan Reynolds himself. On paper, it looked like a dream collaboration. Blake Lively's undeniable star power combined with Justin Baldoni's reputation for emotional, heartfelt storytelling seemed like an unstoppable pairing. Early marketing only amplified the excitement. Trailers and promotional clips painted the project as uplifting, inspiring, and brimming with sincerity. Fans were convinced they were about to witness something special, a film destined to strike a chord and dominate both the box office and award season chatter. But behind the polished facade, trouble had already begun brewing. Almost from the moment production started, cracks began to form in the carefully constructed image of harmony. Insiders whispered that Blake was growing frustrated, and it wasn't difficult to see why. Baldoni wasn't just directing the film, he was also co-writing the script and, to the surprise of many, had carved out a significant on-screen role for himself. To some, it seemed like he was wearing too many hats, blurring the line between filmmaker and star. In Hollywood, creative clashes aren't unusual. They're practically expected, but this was different. The tension on set wasn't subtle, it was suffocating. Crew members allegedly described an atmosphere so charged with hostility that even routine decisions became battles of will. At first, observers chalked it up to the usual tug-of-war between actor and director, a conflict that could be resolved with tough conversations and the right compromises, but things escalated quickly. Blake reportedly accused Baldoni of deliberately sidelining her, claiming he was not only hogging the spotlight, but actively shaping the project in ways that diminished her influence and minimized her creative input. And worse, she suggested he was feeding stories to the press, crafting a narrative that painted her as difficult, demanding, and hard to work with. Given Hollywood's long and documented history of male directors undermining female stars through strategic leaks, the industry was inclined to take her side. Social media erupted. Headlines branded Baldoni as overbearing and controlling. Twitter threads went viral defending Blake as yet another actress unfairly villainized for simply asserting herself. The tide of public opinion turned fast, and for a moment it looked like Baldoni's career might be irreparably damaged. But then everything flipped. Baldoni's camp dropped receipts, timestamped text messages, and emails that shattered the victim narrative Blake had so carefully constructed. The evidence suggested that far from being marginalized, Blake had been a powerful force behind the scenes. She wasn't just participating, she was driving decisions. The leaks portrayed her as a commanding presence, pushing for extensive script rewrites, dictating marketing strategies, and even trying to control the way the project was framed in the press. Perhaps most damning was her reference to her allies in the industry. In one leaked exchange, she described Ryan Reynolds and their network of Hollywood power players as her dragons, a clear reminder of the firepower she could unleash if things didn't go her way. Suddenly, the narrative of Blake as a silenced actress didn't hold. Instead, the receipts suggested she was the one pulling strings to bend the film toward her vision. While the scandal raged, Ryan Reynolds' role in all this remained murky. Was he simply a name being invoked without his knowledge, or was he actively involved in these behind-the-scenes maneuvers? For a time, speculation swirled without answers, as Ryan maintained complete silence. But that silence didn't last long. More explosive leaks emerged, and suddenly the golden boy of Hollywood wasn't an innocent bystander, he was implicated. The messages showed that Ryan wasn't just aware of the drama, he was actively participating in shaping it. Private calls with Hollywood executives, tactical suggestions for leaking damaging stories about Baldoni, carefully drafted PR strategies designed to recast Blake as a misunderstood victim. Ryan's fingerprints were all over it. For years, Ryan had cultivated an image as Hollywood's unshakable good guy, quick-witted, self-deprecating, and universally loved. But now, that carefully crafted brand was under threat. The leaked communications painted him as a behind-the-scenes strategist in a calculated smear campaign. The charming, relatable superstar suddenly looked like a co-conspirator in an ugly Hollywood feud. At first, many still assumed the storm was really about Blake and Justin, with Ryan as little more than collateral damage. But Baldoni wasn't finished. He released even more receipts, detailed, time-stamped digital communications so airtight that they couldn't be dismissed as tabloid spin or baseless accusations. These weren't vague allusions or secondhand whispers. They were proof that Ryan had played a central role in tilting the narrative against Baldoni. And that was when Marvel executives began to panic. Because Ryan Reynolds wasn't just another actor in their roster, he was the cornerstone of Marvel's comedic edge, his wit and timing woven into the DNA of the franchise. He wasn't a replaceable supporting star. He was a centerpiece of their future plans. Yet suddenly, mounting evidence suggested that he had engaged in behavior that threatened Marvel's most valuable commodity, its brand. Hollywood has weathered countless scandals, but this one carried stakes that executives could not ignore. Marvel thrives on squeaky clean partnerships with its lead stars, free from public controversy. Any whiff of manipulation, deception, or toxic behind-the-scenes maneuvering could undermine years of meticulous brand building. Faced with the choice of protecting a box office titan or safeguarding their empire's reputation, Marvel was forced to confront an impossible question. Could even Ryan Reynolds be too risky to keep? If Marvel had chosen to stand by Ryan Reynolds despite undeniable proof of underhanded behavior, the fallout could have been catastrophic. The risk wasn't just alienating fans. It threatened to fracture relationships with cast members, key collaborators, and even filmmakers whose trust in the Marvel brand had always been unshakable. This wasn't the kind of scandal that could be brushed under the rug with a carefully worded statement or a strategic distraction. It was a reckoning. And then came the breaking point. According to insiders, Marvel's top brass convened an emergency meeting inside their Burbank offices, a closed-door session attended only by the studio's most powerful decision-makers. On the table was Justin Baldoni's bombshell evidence. Executives pored over the files in stunned silence, and what they saw was enough to shake the very foundation of the MCU. The leaked material itself wasn't immediately made public, but those who had access described it as devastating. Direct, time-stamped proof that Ryan Reynolds had been actively collaborating with Blake Lively to shape press coverage, manipulate media narratives, and systematically undermine Baldoni during production. And if that wasn't messy enough, whispers soon spread that the scandal's reach extended far beyond a single troubled film. Rumors swirled that the text threads hinted at a broader pattern, a long-running strategy in which Ryan and Blake allegedly leveraged their star power and formidable industry connections to influence projects, pressure studios, and strategically position themselves at the very top of Hollywood's hierarchy. This wasn't about creative disputes anymore. It looked like a playbook for dominance, a power grab exposed in real time. For Marvel, that revelation was the final straw. The studio could no longer frame this as an isolated incident. It wasn't just a fight between an actress and a director. It was a potential blueprint for systemic manipulation, with one of their most bankable stars implicated at the center of it. In a move no one in Hollywood predicted, Marvel made the decision to cut ties with Ryan Reynolds on the spot. Quiet discussions about damage control turned into swift, decisive action. Within hours, executives signed off on a plan to remove Ryan from future projects, effectively wiping their hands clean of one of the franchise's most beloved faces. It was more than a termination, it was an exile. When the official statement finally dropped, fans were stunned. The language was shockingly blunt. Instead of Marvel's typical PR polish, neutral phrases, vague references to creative differences, or hopeful nods toward future collaborations, the studio used sharp, final wording. The release cited a review of newly disclosed information and concluded, unequivocally, that Ryan's continued involvement was no longer tenable. For longtime MCU observers, it was unheard of. Marvel had built its empire on managing PR nightmares with grace, maintaining ironclad loyalty to its stars, and preserving its image at all costs. But this time, there was no soft landing, no upbeat spin. It was a cold, clean break. The internet exploded in real time. Social media feeds detonated with shock, disbelief, and relentless speculation. How could one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, a man whose brand revolved around wit, charm, and untouchable good guy appeal, suddenly find himself cast out by the very studio that had once celebrated him as a cornerstone of their future? Fan forums lit up with theories, TikTok flooded with breakdown videos, and hashtags demanding answers began trending globally within minutes. As the storm raged, Justin Baldoni played his hand with surgical precision. He didn't gloat, didn't mock, didn't even allow himself a smug victory lap. Instead, he doubled down on the very principles he had claimed to stand for from the beginning. He released even more receipts, detailed logs, private emails, and time-stamped text messages that laid out the timeline with unmistakable clarity. His message was simple and unwavering. He wasn't out to destroy careers. He was out to defend his integrity as a filmmaker and protect the cast and crew who had trusted him to lead the project. The impact was immediate. The narrative flipped once again. Only this time, there was no escape route for Ryan or Blake. The walls closed in as Baldoni's meticulous documentation removed any lingering doubt. Public sympathy shifted, and the couple who had once seemed untouchable now looked cornered, exposed, and vulnerable. And this time, Baldoni didn't mince words. His calm but firm stance cut through the noise. He wasn't fighting for clout, headlines, or Hollywood politics. He was fighting for the truth. And in that moment, it became clear that the story was far bigger than a single film. It was about power, accountability, and the brutal reality that even Hollywood royalty could fall. Baldoni framed his evidence not merely as personal vindication, but as a damning indictment of Ryan and Blake's behind-the-scenes maneuvering. He presented it as undeniable proof that the couple had conspired to undermine him, not just as a filmmaker, but as a creative force with credibility in the industry. His message was simple but powerful. Professional disagreements belong in the open, resolved through direct dialogue and collaboration, not backdoor smear campaigns, whispered leaks, and weaponized media manipulation. As Ryan maintained his silence, the spotlight shifted sharply onto Blake. For years, she had been regarded as a paragon of grace, balancing Hollywood stardom with an image of family-first relatability. But now, cracks were beginning to show. Then came the twist no one expected. Her own attorney abruptly cut ties with her, citing irreconcilable differences over her account of events. The move was stunning. Attorneys don't walk away from high-profile clients in the middle of scandals unless the situation has become untenable. The internet ignited instantly with speculation. Was Blake the true mastermind orchestrating this elaborate